midst of the turmoil that we have, there is a strong behind-the-scenes movement toward even a greater presence of world government. They want to solve this crisis by internationalizing the financial system. The last 20, 30 years, it's been internationalized, but we had a privilege. We got to print the gold. So we had an advantage. We lived off others, but that's coming to an end. We are the biggest debtor, and soon that debt will be called. But when they are trying now to put this together and they're going to internationalize it, it is going to be more of the same internationalism, WTO, and regulations and banking system. The only thing that we have going for us, it is impossible for that system to last and to work, because you cannot have a fiat system, whether it's a single country or an international government, to make paper money work. That is why the money issue is so important. That in a free society, you have to have honest money. Honest money is what the founders described as, and that says that only gold and silver should be legal tender. But we ought to address the subject of foreign policy. Part of the reasons why we lost this last election was the foreign policy issue. Generally speaking, the presidential candidate who argues the case for less warmongering will win the election. And, of course, Obama took the advantage of it. You know, he says, I'm going to end the war in Iraq, and I'm going to bring those troops home and solve all the problems. And he won the election. So this generally is the case. But the truth is, foreign policy hasn't changed. We should be looking more to what George Bush said in the year 2000. He was strongly critical of the Clinton years, of nation building and being the policeman of the world, what we were doing in Bosnia and Somalia. And he won the election. He said some very, very good things. But after that, he again joined the internationalists, joined this idea that the American taxpayers, you, have an obligation to take care of everybody and police the world and put our military out there and be exposed to all this danger. It doesn't make any sense. This is literally what bankrupts the country, is the international expenditures. It costs us $1 trillion a year to take care of our foreign policy, and that cannot last. And it is coming to an end. Matter of fact, the person most pleased with our foreign policy is Osama bin Laden, because he has written about this, and he said, I am going to get you to come over here, and we'll fight you on our sand, and we will do what we did to the Soviets. Of course, we helped him do what he did to the Soviets, because we subsidized and supported him to drain the Soviets, and he said he will do the same thing. He will eventually bankrupt this country, and lo and behold, we are weaker for it. Our military personnel are fatigued. I was very proud of what happened last year in the campaign, because I talk about the old conservative, Republican, non-interventionist, constitutional foreign policy, and we, in our campaign, got the most money than any candidate from the military. But historically, great nations end when they overextend themselves overseas, whether it's back to the Roman days or the Soviets or whatever. The country feels so emboldened that they go and they think themselves as being overly wonderful and that we are going to spread our message. It actually started in World War I. The truth is, there was no need for us to be involved in World War I. But who wasn't? But there it was. It was Woodrow Wilson said we have to do it because we have to make the world safe for democracy, which led to this millions, hundreds of millions of people killed in the 20th century. So we're back at the same thing. We have to go and spread our goodness in the Middle East. So yeah, we wanted to get rid of a bad guy in Iraq. We did. But it took another 1 million Iraqis got killed. Believe me, they weren't all terrorists. Some people didn't particularly like that. But nevertheless, it pleased Osama bin Laden because we were there, we were bankrupting our country, and right now, today, we get a new president that says he doesn't like He didn't like the war that was going on. So what are we going to do? We're going to drag another 17,000 Americans and pump them into Afghanistan. Don't we know anything about history? It is bankrupting our country. It will end, whether the people agree with me or not, it will end because we can't afford it. That's the way it's always ended throughout history. That's what the financial crisis is telling us. The welfare state will end because the money will quit working and we will no longer be able to afford to promote what we're doing around the world. And the sooner we realize that, the better. But today it's only financed because we have this monetary system, because we can't possibly tax the people. We can't borrow much more, so we're still relying on the Federal Reserve. So what has the Federal Reserve done in this last year or so? You know, Congress has spent hundreds of billions trying to bail out the system. Republicans are now voting against this, which is good. I'm delighted with that, but it's a little bit late. But they're voting against it. But what about... What is the Federal Reserve doing? We talk about $800 billion and it's a big deal. The Federal Reserve does it in trillions. We're up to a commitment of $9 trillion. We in Congress and you as citizens have no idea what's going on. And it's government totally out of control. And it's to take care of their buddies. They pump this money into the industries. And what happens? They get out and they get huge billions and billions of dollars worth of bonuses. And then they go and buy Treasury bills to keep the dollar from crashing. Because they will leave the Treasury bills eventually. So they bail out their friends and the bonuses are paid and the American people suffer because in the age of inflation, the middle class gets wiped out. The characteristic of inflation is the wiping out of the middle class and enhancing the wealthy. So it's an economic and political system that is here to destroy us and here to destroy our freedoms unless we understand what freedom is all about. Freedom comes to us in a natural way. It's in a God-given way. It is not given to us because we belong to a group. Not because there's no such thing as women's rights and minority rights and gay rights and all these things. There's only one type of right, and that is an individual right that has come to us from God. To defend that right, it's like defending freedom of the press. The freedom of the press gives people the right to write controversial things and engage in controversial discussions. Otherwise, you would have prior restraint and the government would come in and tell newspapers and radios what they could say and do. Nobody wants that. But every single day we have prior restraint on everything we do in the marketplace. Every market transaction, every labor transaction, every dollar transaction, every property transaction is done only with the permission of the government. So we now have moved a major step in the direction of socialism. And they talk about nationalism and nationalizing the banks. Well, the name isn't as important as the control. We are closer to a fascist system where the government has total control of our lives and our economy, and that is what has to be stopped. But if we understand what freedom means for freedom of the press and no prior restraint, we also cannot, as conservatives, say that we have to have prior restraint on individuals in their social behavior, that we can regulate social behavior. We have some people defending economic liberty rather well and others defending social liberty, and yet it's all one and the same. The founders understood that. And if we could only put that together, people would have freedom of choice in their economics and their social endeavors. The only thing is, under that system, you have to be responsible for yourself. If you do harm to yourself or don't take care of yourself economically, you can't go crawling to the government and begging and pleading and demanding. We get involved too much in social legislation because some of the states want to do the right thing.